You may notice the heading back here. It's something we've already talked about, and it's kind of an awkward part of the way we've got our course structured. That our textbook talks about one-sided limits like 3 sections after we've already introduced the notion of one-sided limits. I think it works out all right though because it gives us a chance kind of to revisit that stuff, and it also lets us talk about one of the trickier types of examples that ends up emerging out of the limit law analytical limit evaluation type stuff that we've just been doing. So you may recall from the calculator driven video that I want to take a look at a limit that involves an absolute value. Before I do that though, it feels like the absolute value is a really sort of intuitive notion to most folks. I mean, if you ask them what the absolute value of a number is, just about without fail, they'll end up giving you the correct response back, like for a given value. Like the absolute value of 3 is 3, the absolute value of -10 is 10, that kind of thing. And if you try to get them to tell you how you find the absolute value of a number, the answers, like I said, it's not that it's unintuitive or anything. It's just the answer. Well, you just make it positive, or you just get rid of any negatives, or something along those lines. Defining how that works mathematically, though, is surprisingly intricate, and it turns out this is going to be a running theme throughout the course. A lot of our trickiest examples turn out to involve this notion of absolute value, which is a really intuitive notion on the surface. So real quick, just as a reminder, so the old absolute value function with the little bars there, he's actually a piecewise defined function. What we do with the absolute value of x depends on what x is, really. So, in general, if x is positive or if x is 0, you don't have to do anything, right? Like I said, the absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of 0 is 0. So, we just get x back in that instance. It's what happens in this other case that usually ends up giving us fits. Well, if it's negative, if it's less than 0, you make it positive. The catch is, we don't have like a mathematical operation that just makes something positive. Well, I guess technically we have absolute value, but we're trying to define what that means. So we can't just say make it positive. As it turns out, it's not too tough. It's just that we have to stop and actually process what that means. To get something that's negative, we can negate whatever our negative number is. So for x values less than 0, that's what the absolute value of x looks like. Like I said, I used -10 earlier. Negative -10, because negative times negative is positive. It gives us +10, and that's what we want out of this. So that is our absolute value function, the classic like V for victory type graph. So that having been said, now that we've rehearsed what this ends up meaning, let's take a look at it in the context of that example that I used when talking about graphs and limits failing to exist. So here it is, absolute value of 5x plus 10 over the quantity x plus 2. And we want to know its limiting behavior as x gets close to -2. Clearly, -2 plugged in here gives us a 0 denominator. That's bad. -2 up top gives us a 0 numerator. Maybe there's a way to salvage this. Heads up, you cannot just cancel terms away from inside these absolute value bars. I've seen an awful lot of students who are like, oh, well, I can just factor off the 5, and then I cancel away some x plus 2s, and all I've got now is like absolute value of 1 or something. No, you can't do that. No, nix it. Forget it. What we're going to have to do is look at this from each side, from our left and right hand limits, and see if they end up agreeing. I mean, we already kind of know the answer from the graph, or we suspect the answer. We just need to confirm it. All right, so first I'm going to look from the right-hand side. So, all right, so we got that guy. From the right, superscripted plus means we're only considering values bigger than -2. So things like -1, -1.5, you get the idea. You may notice if we plug x values like that into this stuff in here inside these absolute value bars, that is in fact a positive quantity up until we get to -2, right? Because 5 times something that's bigger than -2 is not going to be less than 10. So that means we're dealing with the positive side of that absolute value division on our piecewise function. So we can safely just drop the absolute value bars. we technically still have a one-sided limit here. So, and at this point, yeah, we can factor off, the 5, like I suggested, / and then all we've got left is 5 in the numerator and 1 in the denominator, and that jives with what we saw in our picture, that, we had that graph that was just kind of doing this number. Let's see what happens from the left. Okay, so now we got that guy right there, and we're plugging in numbers for x. We're only considering values less than -2, so -3, -2.5, -2 point, you get the idea. So that time around, this stuff is now negative. It's less than 0. So we need the other branch of our piecewise absolute value function. So, and we saw that means we got to have a negative out in front of this thing. Again, note the parentheses. That's important. It'll mess stuff up if you don't put it there. So again, we can factor off the 5. We have -5 times x plus 2 in parentheses. They, cancel out just like before. But now instead of just a 5, we have a -5 here, and then, just a 1 down below. So we see the left-hand limit is -5. Again, matching up with what we saw in our picture. And our left and right-hand limits do not agree, so our conclusion, the limit does not exist. I usually don't write the DNE shorthand, but there it is. When we state that a limit doesn't exist, it's often sort of good form to describe the kind of bad behavior that's going on, which of those 3 reasons the limit fails to exist. So as I said, the shorthand we'll often use in that instance looks like that. LHB not equal to RHB. And they said if you wrote it out, left and right hand behaviors disagree like I did in the previous video, it's all good. That's fine. That works just great. All right. So sort of the moral of the story here, 1, absolute values can be a pain. 2, our limit laws and everything, they still function just fine for one-sided limits. So you can use all of the same machinery that we've seen before when dealing with stuff like this. I've got one more example that I want to take a look at, so bear with me just a sec. Thank you. Thank you for waiting for me. Anyway, so to wrap this section up, I wanted to take a look at an example where I didn't hide the piecewise function from you with absolute value bars or anything like that. So our function behaves differently depending on which side of 1 we're considering. For x values less than 1, we've got this quadratic thing describing how g of x behaves. Once we get past 1, we shift to a linear function. So if you look at a graph of this guy, you got kind of the sad-faced quadratic, and then all of a sudden you're going to have like a jagged transition to a linear guy with a positive slope. So the question is, do our left and right-hand limits at 1 agree? Anywhere else, we're fine. Generally, these breakpoints are what we're interested in. So let's take a look. So I'll do the left this time first, just to mix things up. All right, so when we do the left-hand limit of this g of x function, well, we're only considering values, again, that superscripted minus says less than 1. That means we're always looking at values right here, so we don't actually even need the piecewise thing. We can just rewrite this as follows. 3 minus 2x squared. And from here, there's no real reason in this case we can't just use our direct substitution trick. There's no division by 0. Just plug x equals 1 into this thing. 3 minus 2 times 1 squared, 3 minus 2 is 1. So our left-hand limit has a value of 1. Let's check the right-hand limit, see if it's on board. So again, we're wanting a right-hand limit, thus the superscripted plus. That means x values are all bigger than 1, which means we're stuck working with just this bottom branch. So and you can kind of see where this is going, right? So no division, no reason we can't just do the direct sub and plug x equals 1 into this thing. 5 times 1 minus 4. 5 minus 4 is also 1. So these guys are in agreement. So that tells us that our overall limit for g of x is also going to be 1. So, I can only write it up here because I'm out of workspace. So but we have just confirmed that the overall value of this limit, it does exist, and it is 1. We don't have that RHV not equal to RHV thing. If you look at a graph, our quadratic does this number, it arches over, and then actually at that corner point at 1, boing, the linear thing tags it precisely. There's no break in the function. All right, so that's what I wanted to say as far as one-sided limits goes. If you're okay with what we've done up until now, yeah, for the most part, other than maybe like an absolute value thing or something like this, now you know, and knowing is half the battle.